ট্রাই অ্যাগেন করে দেখো। তাই তো। না, এরর আছে, এটা এরর আছে। ওবিএস থেকে আসছে, বাট এটা ইয়ের প্রবলেম হচ্ছে, কোনো ইউটিউবের কোনো প্রবলেম হচ্ছে। আপনি একবার রিফ্রেশ করুন। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে, এবার ঠিক আছে, এবার ঠিক আছে। হ্যাঁ 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 হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ, দেখছি, দাঁড়ান। দাঁড়ান। আপনি ইয়েটাতে চলে আসুন, মিটটা ডিসপ্লে করুন। হ্যাঁ। গার্লস ওপেন মানে ঘুরছে, আমারই নেট স্লো হয়ে গেছে, দাঁড়ান। হ্যাঁ, আচ্ছা আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, এসছে, এসছে, এসছে। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ। রিজিউম করুন ডিসপ্লেটা। Yes, 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 yes.
Hello, am I audible? Okay. Very good morning. I, on behalf of the Department of Political Science, Shama Prasad College, along with Sri Chandan Rai, and the Department of Political Science, Malda College, as well as the webinar organizing committee, who have been working tirelessly for the successful organization of this webinar day and night for the last few days. We would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to today's webinar titled Women in Politics. We have an August gathering here. We would like to extend a special welcome to our honorable keynote speaker, Dr. Devi Chatterjee Madam, respected resource persons, Dr. Trideep Chakraborty, Dr. Sanjukta Bhattacharya, and Dr. Jayachandra Reddy Gundresa. We also welcome our distinguished invited paper presenters to today's webinar. Now, why did we decide to do a webinar on women in politics in the first place? It is primarily because I feel that deep in our psyche, we have always regarded politics as a male bastion. If we remember our very basic readings, for example, Aristotle's Politics, we would be able to recollect that he saw women as subjects of men, but as hired than slaves, thank him for this generosity, lacking authority and requiring the exertion of political rule by their husbands. In ancient Greek city-states such as in Athens, women's rights were limited. They were barred from political participation, and Athenian women were not permitted to represent themselves in law. Moving forward, when we read the Roman political thought, once again we find that women there could not vote or hold office. Even Niccolo Machiavelli, who is etched in our memories for his thoughts, which proved to be the harbinger of Renaissance in Europe, has often been criticized for his misogynistic tonality. Machiavelli, similar to philosophers like Plato and Hobbes, never referred to a future theoretical ruler in his seminal work, The Prince, as female, and unabashedly refused to acknowledge women's potentials as rulers. He too, it seems, could not get out of the androcentric mode of thinking. Moving on, we fondly remember Jean Baudin for his invaluable contribution to the theory of sovereignty. Did he believe that women were as good as men as the sovereign? Unfortunately, here too, we find that he holds that the rule of women is against divine. And he too confines women and their role to the family life alone. Simone de Beauvoir had once remarked, representation of the world, I repeat, representation of the world, like the world itself, is the work of men. They describe it from their own point of view, which they confuse as absolute truth. As teachers, we teach J.N. Tickner and her book Gender in International Relations. And we tell students how she talks of engendered insecurities in politics. She cites several examples. From them, I want to mention one example. She talks of Bella Abzug. When Bella entered the House of Representatives in USA in 1972, she felt that the topmost agenda in the congressional items listed was how to end the Vietnam War. Bella was extremely passionate about it, and she wanted to work on it. With this goal in mind, she requested a seat on the House Armed Services Committee. But her request was flatly denied by members of the House leadership. And one of them suggested that the Agricultural Committee would be more suitable for her. Actually, I feel characteristics associated with manliness such as toughness, courage, power, independence, and even physical strength, have through history been those most valued in the conduct of politics. Now, frequently, manliness has also been associated with violence and the use of force, a type of behavior that, when conducted in the international arena, has been valorized and applauded in the name of defending one's country. That is why perhaps it took many years of campaigning and demonstrations for women in most parts of the world to gain something as basic as the right to vote, something that her male counterpart never had to. And Saudi Arabia is the latest country where women have won the right to vote in as recent as 2015. And we still wonder why we need to conduct seminars, webinars, workshops, etc. on the issue of women in politics. My answer to that would be, we need to do that, perhaps because there was never any necessity that was felt by anyone to discuss about men in politics, as if politics is to men is quite similar to what water is to fish. Can we ever forget how Manu degraded the role of women in public life in the post-Vedic period? Can we ever forget the infamous remarks of Nietzsche on the role of women in public life, where he says, and I quote him here, the true man wants two things, danger and play. For that reason, he wants woman as the most dangerous plaything. And he continues, women are not even shallow. Woman is God's second mistake, etc., etc., etc. Can we ever forget the contribution of women in the French Revolution, in the Russian Revolution, in India's freedom struggles, in environmental movements across the globe? We need to dedicate each seminar, and perhaps that will not be enough if we have to analyze women's role in each of these. Unfortunately, most of their struggles remain undocumented. Perhaps because the correct assessment of their invaluable roles, of the sacrifices that they have made for their country, for their society, for their brothers, fathers, and sons throughout history, can never ever be documented in entirety. Should we forget the contributions of Rani of Jhansi, of Savitribai Phule, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, Anandi Gopal Joshi, Sucheta Kripalani, Bina Das, Matangini Hazra, Pritilata Vadidar, Aruna Roy, Medha Patkar, Iram Sharmila, so on and so forth. Should we not celebrate them? Should we not read more of them? I did not study any of their lives or their struggles at any level in my formal education, except perhaps Jhansi Ki Rani in some fleeting references here and there in our history textbooks. In a country where we have seen very successful women leaders as the president, as the prime minister, and as chief ministers in states, do we still feel that politics is a male bastion? Somewhere, despite all the evils, all the negativities, I still feel that I'm lucky to have taken birth in this country where women automatically got their voting rights with their male counterparts. They did not have to demonstrate separately for their voting rights, and women got it with their male counterparts with the birth of the Republic. And even during these challenging COVID pandemic times, should we not appreciate Madam Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, who made her country the first in the world to be declared corona-free? She's one of the youngest heads of state in the world right now. As the leader of the country, she has seen earthquakes. She has dealt with terrorist attacks. She has steered her country out of very turbulent times, through her grit, through her smile. And mind you, all while tending to her newborn child. Should we not appreciate the contributions of women in active politics, such as Sirimavo Bandaranaike, Golda Meir, Angela Merkel, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Aung San Suu Kyi, Michelle Bachelet, Judy Smith, Janet Yellen, Helle Thorning-Schmidt, Laurel Lynch, Park Geun-hye, Tsai Ing-wen, Theresa May, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, Indira Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi, Sheikh Hasina, Erna Solberg, Amina Gurib Fakim, Sara Amarilla. Trust me, I, coming from International Relations Department, did not know some of these names. They are either the president of their respective countries, or the prime minister, or the head of the ruling party. Yet, somewhere deep inside, it is our apathy, it is our ignorance that we don't know their name, or we don't bother to know their name. Therefore, we decided to organize this seminar as a token of appreciation to all those female personalities whose names, whose struggles are well known and well documented. And this webinar is especially dedicated to the loving memory of all those female fighters whose names, whose sacrifices could never ever find a way to our history books. We bow before them in gratitude. This webinar is also organized with the desire that we, in our little ways, contribute to the society, which will help in shaping a generation of philosophers and practitioners who would not believe or preach that women are God's mistake and that they are unfit for public life. With this hope and prayer, let us begin our day on a very positive note, looking forward to several enriching deliberations. I request all participants to keep their microphones muted. You can put in your questions and comments in the chat box. We will put your questions to your respected speakers. When you will be putting your question, remember to write your name, your institutional affiliation, your question, and most importantly, to whom it is directed. Thank you. Let us now have the inaugural musical presentation, please. I request Mr. Dev Kumar Sinha, renowned flutist and a very popular flute maker, to present before us his rendition of M.K. Gandhiji's Bhajan Vaishnav Janatu. Flutes made by him have traveled far and wide in the world, and to many eminent flute players, these are prized possessions. He is also Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Malda College. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So, very good morning to all of you. I've chosen the famous bhajan of our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhiji, Vaishnava Janatu, and I thought it to be of great importance because the bhajan, the song by Gandhiji, already sung by 124 countries on the 150th birth anniversary last year. The singers from 124 countries got together at Delhi and sang the song in order to pay the homage to our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi. That's why I thought it is a great importance of national and international both aspects. So I'm trying to play that bhajan, Vaishnava Janatu. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are. Yes,
Please listen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I now request Dr. Kumar Gupta, Principal of Malda College and the Joint President of the Organizing Committee of this webinar, to kindly deliver the welcome address. Dr. Manush Kumar Boiddu, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Tilottama, Chandon. It gives me immense pleasure to extend you all a very warm welcome on behalf of organizing colleges, Shama Prasad Mukherjee College, Kolkata, and Malda College, Malda. I take this rare opportunity to welcome and express my sincere thanks and gratitude to all honorable speakers of today's webinar. I also would like to welcome to all the participants, my dear students, teachers present in this webinar. I also like to convey my sincere thanks and gratitude to our administrator, the District Magistrate of Malda, Sri Rajoshi Mitro, IAS, for his continuous encouragement in this direction. I also like to convey my sincere thanks and gratitude to the principal, Shubires Bhattacharya of Shama Prasad Mukherjee College, and presently the Honorable Vice Chancellor of North Bengal University, and the Vice Principal, Sushmita Mukherjee, Shama Prasad Mukherjee College, for attending their cooperative hands for jointly organizing this national webinar. The topic of today's webinar very interesting. I strongly believe the full and equitable participation of essential to building and sustaining sustaining strong, vibrant democracies. But our country still suffers from serious problems of gender inequality. Cases of domestic violence, sexual harassment, among others. And the one major reason for the situation is because the women parliamentarians have limited powers and largely underrepresented. Gender Index 2019 paints a different reality and reminds us to look beyond the measure of women in parliaments alone when assessing how a country has fared in promoting gender equity in the political space. Even though reservations are an important tool for more women in politics to enter the parliament, a positive enabling environment aligned with gender equity in terms of access and opportunities, distribution of resources are equally important. We should look beyond reservation while talking about women in politics. I hope today's webinar will cover all the aspects: women empowerment, gender inequality, role of women in nation building, and others. The spread of COVID-19 has affected almost all spheres of human life. The COVID-19 crisis not only creates a disaster, but also creates the opportunity to come together as one humankind. It also gives the opportunity to learn together, to grow together. So it is gratifying to note that the agenda of today's webinar will cover all the aspects. I hope today's webinar will be a grand success. I also congratulate all the faculty members of the Department of Political Science of Shama Prasad Mukherjee College as well as Malda College for organizing the relevant topic for relevant webinar, that is women in politics. Now I like to conclude my welcome address by sharing, learn together, grow together, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I now request Dr. Shushmita Mukherjee, Vice Principal, Shama Prasad College and the Joint President of the Webinar Organizing Committee, to deliver the inaugural address.
A very good morning and a warm welcome to everyone present here. I'm extremely happy. Huh? Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Please continue.
I'm extremely happy to be a part of this webinar organized jointly by Malda College and Shama Prasad College. I extend my warm gratitude to the principal, Dr. Manush Kumar Boiddo, and the organizing committee and the faculty of political science of Malda College for collaborating with us in this webinar. I also profusely thank the Department of Political Science of Shama Prasad College and the head of the department, Dr. Tilottama Mukherjee, for holding this webinar along with Malda College. My sincere thanks and gratitude to all the participants and this respected speaker. The topic of this webinar, Women in Politics, is extremely interesting, important, and relevant. Kofi Annan, the erstwhile Secretary General of UN, had said that the role of women in decision-making was central to the advancement of women around the world and the progress of humankind as a whole. Women's participation in politics helps the gender equality, and as Madeleine Albright observes, it also raises issues that others overlook and seek an end to abuses that others accept. Keeping this in mind, if we just turn to the Indian context, we would see that Indian women in colonial period from the late 19th and early 20th century wrote and spoke about women's condition, formed organization to secure desired change, and eventually had an impact on the institutions of their society. The notable contribution of the Indian women was in the field of suffrage, education, civil and legal rights. Within the colonial framework and the patriarchy, we have to remember that India was a prejudiced, superstitious country where women were always dominated, within that framework and within that patriarchy, Indian women fought for their own rights in their own way, maybe limited, but in their own way, not following the British model. Their political capacities found expression in the formation of the first women organization called the Arjo Mahila Samaj under Pandita Ramabai. Women's self-authorization program was coming into the public domain. For example, they were making use of petition in claiming their rights to property, livelihood, remarriage. It was after the First World War that we find women entering the political arena and fighting for the rights. As early as 1918, Sarojini Naidu was fighting for the rights of women on the ground that voting rights of women on the ground that it was rational, politically and scientifically sound, compatible with tradition and consistent with human rights. When Gandhi entered, we find that with him, a lot of women entered the political field. And Gandhi realized the potential of women in the political fight and involved them specially in different constructive programs. Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, another Gandhiite, was the first women legislator of India, and she fought for the rights of the women and eradication of Devdasi. Without Muthulakshmi Reddy, I think the Devdasi system would have continued even today. Post-independence government encouraged women to join the public domain. And I would say that perhaps this lineage of women in the political arena had created a mindset where we welcome Mrs. Gandhi as the first Prime Minister of India. And I don't know, I think that it should be dealt with, I think, that whether there was a gender lens through which we saw Mrs. Gandhi or we saw her as a prominent political personality, irrespective of her gender. And for meaningful participation of women in national level and community leadership roles, Women's Reservation Bill was introduced, but unfortunately we do not have that right now. And today, only 70 women are in the parliament, that is 14%. I would always say that in India, this entry of women into the political arena was there, but it was always limited due to different reasons. I can go into it, but it's very interesting that it was always limited. So today that we find the reflection that only 14%. If we look at the global scenario, women were underrepresented in the legislative, justice, economic decision-making, and even in peace and security sections. The picture was beginning to gain some positive signs. In 1995, women had accounted for 11.3% of all legislatures in the World Parliament. In 2015, the picture improved a bit, and we find that 16.3% of women were in the legislature. In 1995, Sweden had topped the ranking of women in parliament with 40.4%. 10 years later, we find Rwanda having 48.4%. And if this goes on, then an average of 30% of women will be found in 2025. To reach the 50-50 parity, we have to wait till 2040. I end my note with a genuine wish that it is achieved much earlier, that this parity of 50-50 is achieved much earlier than the projected time, because women's political participation results in tangible gains for democracy, including greater responsiveness to citizens' need, increased cooperation across party and ethnic lines, and a more sustainable future. I'm certain that today's seminar would once more reiterate this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this very informative inaugural address. Thank you. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to now request Dr. Devi Chatterjee, madam, to deliver the keynote address. She is a person I genuinely look up to. As a teacher, she has set such high standards, such a benchmark for us, that I doubt if we could ever reach anywhere near it by the end of our careers. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, kindly allow me to formally introduce you to our audience. Just a couple of minutes. She is retired professor, Department of International Relations, Dadapur University, Kolkata. Former visiting professor, Department of Human Rights and Human Development, Rabindra Bharati University. former visiting professor, Department of Political Science, Rabindra Bharati University, former coordinator, Center for Refugee Studies, Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University. She has several books. She has authored, co-authored several books. She's also the former coordinator, PG Diploma course in Human Rights and Duties, Education, Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University, former guest lecturer, Department of Sociology, University of Calcutta, former guest faculty, Human Rights Program under the Department of Anthropology, University of Calcutta. She specializes in Dalit studies, Indian society and social problems, human rights, gender, public administration. She is the founder editor of the biannual journal Contemporary Voice of Dalit, published by Sage Publications India. She has authored multiple books. As I was telling you, some names of those books are Dalit Rights, Human Rights, Ideas and Movements Against Caste in India, Up Against Caste, Comparative Study of Ambedkar and Periyar, Sociology of National Integration, Marxist Thought in India, Color Volcano. In addition to these, all of these, there are many co-edited books, written articles in journals and edited volumes. Over to you, ma'am, finally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tilakama. A very good morning to everyone. I must thank the organizers of this webinar for inviting me to deliver the keynote address. It is indeed a great opportunity for me. Today's webinar is on women in politics. The domain of politics has traditionally been considered to be a male domain. Women have been kept out of it, a field that is not meant for women. It is argued that politics calls for masculine qualities. Women don't have it. Women have feminine qualities, and hence women should be out of it. It is also a fact that traditionally, women have been drawn into the field of politics as a sort of backup. We would notice the backup during the times of nationalist movements in different countries. We find this backup in the form of protest movements, etc. Women's exclusion stood together with the political, the social, the economic, and different aspects of exclusion in society. Now, here, one point I would emphasize is that as we talk about women's involvement in politics, women in politics, we must remember it has many facets. It is not just about representation in political institutions. That is, of course, a very important part of it. And we shall come to it. But I would say it is not simply about that. It involves women as voters, the role they play as voters, the extent of consciousness that they exhibit in this matter, their participation throughout the year in the political arena, in campaigns, in meetings, in programs that are political, their active participation there, not simply voting occasionally. The role which the women play in political parties is another facet that needs to be considered. Are they workers in the political parties? Are they active? Are they consciously active? Or do they function rather mechanically? Are they found in decision-making positions in the party? How do they function there? These are important questions to be asked. As leaders in political parties, in state politics, in the politics of a country, do they reach those positions with ease? Do they face difficulties in reaching those positions? The nature of the difficulties, how much is it gender-based? And what are the obstacles they face in the course of their functioning? Women can also be seen as influencers of politics. Now, this is a dimension which often gets missed out. Not being present visibly, women have from time immemorial influenced politics in different ways. In families, the mother, the wife has influenced politics. The girlfriend has influenced politics. The woman in the red light area has influenced politics. There have been very prominent figures amongst them who have exerted their influence significantly. We cannot and should not forget their contributions in different ways when we talk about women in politics. So I'm simply trying to draw your attention to the fact that women in politics is not simply about women in political institutions, in government institutions. From there, I would move on to say that when we look at formal political institutions, women are, broadly speaking, underrepresented across the world. The scenario is not the same in all countries. In some countries, their underrepresentation is greater. In some countries, the underrepresentation is lesser. The barriers or the factors that account for this underrepresentation are many. There are political obstacles, there are socioeconomic obstacles, there are psychological obstacles, and very importantly, there are ideological barriers. Women, as I started by saying, are considered unfit for politics. And hence, on the basis of their gender, they get excluded from not just politics, but much more. There, it is actually a question of exclusion from power. Wherever it's a question of power, accessing power, the exclusion of women is clearly visible. Now, participation of women, as I have already mentioned, in formal political institutions has been limited. But at the same time, if you notice, you will see that in agitational activities, especially in certain areas, women's presence has been clearly visible. In certain types of movements, you will find women in the forefront. As I mentioned, in nationalist struggles in many countries, women have come to the forefront. They have sacrificed their lives. the analysis could follow different lines there. It could be because of their political consciousness, their awareness of politics. It could be because of the influence of the male members in the family or in the nearby circles. Their impact on the women have made them play the role. In certain cases, it could be a mechanical functioning on the part of women, as many others have played the role, so they have also moved out to play the role. In certain cases, they may have also been treated as what we could say cannon fodder. So a lot of analysis needs to go into it. To what extent it has been actual political consciousness and acceptance. In agitational politics, I would say, however, women have voluntarily and actively come to the forefront on certain issues which tend to directly impact their interests and their lives. When it comes to environmental issues, women have played a prominent role across the world. When it has come to protesting price rises, women have been in the forefront. In general, human rights questions, women have played an important role. In movements against alcoholism, women have come to the fore. So women are not invisible on political questions. They are there. They are visible, yet not in mainstream politics. There they are constantly being marginalized. Many of us would say that, well, there are prominent women across the world whose names we are all familiar with. We have had prominent women in India. We have had prominent women in other countries as political leaders, heads of states. So why do I speak of women's underrepresentation? I would say those are individual names. It does not speak of the vast majority of the women. When we are talking about numbers, it does not answer our question. Another important point to be noted here is that many of these prominent women, if we take a list of them, I'm not going into it right now in view of the shortage of time, but I leave it to you to see. Look at the list of the names. Many of them have risen to their prominence on the basis of being propped up by male members of the family or close peer groups. It has been male support, either the father or the brother or the husband, who has propped up the woman. And she has found an acceptance in society as the relative or the near one of the person concerned. In our country, think of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Think of the fact that she was the daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru. Think of the image of Sonia Gandhi. An image of an Indian Bahu that is projected with the cover on her head that she frequently has. Think of the political leaders in prominence in Bangladesh. Think of Benazir Bhutto in Pakistan. Think of different figures across the world. There is a male connection or a projection that helps them to reach the positions they reach. Thereafter, they assert themselves in many cases. They have their own identity, their own impact, and they emerge in many cases as, I would say, powerful, prominent leaders. I am not going into controversies regarding their policies or what's right and what's wrong about what they have done or not done. But the fact is, they emerge as powerful figures. That is true. But in the emergence of powerful figures, in the initial projection, it has been primarily the male connection. Further, in power, when they are taking decisions, the people around them largely are men, not women. In terms of numbers, if you're looking at it, it is men who surround them, and it is not women who are surrounding them. The issues which are taken up are not issues very often which are primarily issues of concern for women. So these are certain dimensions that we have to keep in mind. We also need to remember that in terms of participation of women in politics, there are differences across caste, class, race, etc. When it comes to the question of reaching the higher levels of politics, getting elected, getting a cabinet position perhaps, very often the portfolios that are given to the women are softer portfolios. Portfolios of health, education, women and child development. Women and child development are portfolios that are generally not given to men. Why not? Why aren't these areas allotted to men also? Gendered socialization right from the beginning tends to suggest that women's entry into politics is not, by and large, welcome, at least not independently. And even when it does take place, it is seen more as an exception. It is in the political families. I would again bring in the question of families here. In the political families that it is more accepted. The media plays a vital role here in the way in which women are projected. The emphasis on the whole is on the body of the woman rather than the brains of the woman. A very interesting documentary, many of you may have seen it, of 2011, Misrepresentation by Jennifer Sibel Newsom. It revealed the negative image of women in the media. How over decades women get projected in the media. Whether you look at TV shows, whether you look at the ads, whether you look at newscasts, wherever you see, it is a negative image of the woman that gets projected. And naturally, this is evident when you are looking at the reporting or projection of women aspiring for politics or in the political field. The focus is on her dress, the dress codes, whether she is observing the dress codes, whether she is violating the dress codes. The focus is on body weight, the focus is on beauty, the focus is on sex appeal, etc. So these are certain stereotypes. Her character, what she is like, according to traditional norms. So these are certain stereotypes which are used to assess women as they try to impact politics. Now, of course, on the plus side, we would say that there is an increasing role of women in politics. This has taken place over the years. We have noticed it. Women have the right to vote across the world. They have where there is a system of voting. Women do play important roles in different political organizations and political parties. International organizations such as the United Nations does exert pressure in favor of women's rights. There are numerous international treaties and documents upholding women's rights. There are pressures coming from powerful international and national NGOs in favor of women's rights. There are women's organizations today which are very powerful, which speak of women's rights. So as the overall condition of women is sought to be improved, women's political participation, it is hoped, would improve and does improve, though it is slowly and leaving a very, very big gap. Now, it has been noticed by a very important NGO, National Democratic Institute, founded in 1983, which has a record of 35 years of work in more than 100 states, that greater women's participation has tended to show that women work more across party lines. They are more responsive to the concerns of their constituency. They help to secure lasting peace. They encourage citizens' confidence in democracy, and they tend to give priority to health, education, and other key development indicators. Now, overall, greater participation of women, I would say, very clearly means greater democratic participation, greater democracy. If women are excluded to a greater or lesser extent, it means lesser democracy. Because women, after all, are nearly 50% of the population. And when I say participation, I mean it in every sense of the term. Not just holding office, not just being members of parliament, not just being at the top, at the helm of one or the other political party, and being surrounded by men as the support base. I mean, in every sense of the term, women's greater participation means greater democratic participation. I would also say that women's greater participation creates conditions for greater empowerment of women. That is also a reality. A politically active woman, once again in the wider sense, does enjoy greater social leverage. She does have a greater voice, a greater amount of power in society, in the family, and in her surroundings. Apart from this, there are two other points also which I would like to draw your attention to. That is, does greater women's participation mean greater focus on women's issues? This is a point that has often been projected. Now, I am not very sure of that, because potentially I would say yes. Potentially, yes. But actually, whether it always does lead to a greater focus on women's issues is something that needs to be very carefully and minutely examined. It has not always led to such a focus, unfortunately. Though I hope and I would expect that to happen. Also, another point on which I would say I have my questions is whether greater women's participation would mean change in policies overall at the international level and the national level. Would it mean a greater focus on peace, a greater focus on welfare issues, etc.? This is also which I think needs to be minutely examined, which I am not very sure of as of now. As of now. And there could be various explanations for that. There could be various explanations which we need to look into, and I'm sure the paper presenters would be doing these. I have a postscript, finally, to present before you. I'm running out of time, I know. The postscript is the COVID effect. COVID-19 is exposing and aggravating vulnerabilities. The already vulnerable are becoming more vulnerable, and that applies to women amongst many other vulnerable groups. There are cultural and socioeconomic setbacks which are likely to impact on women's participation in politics. The political impact is yet to fully unfold and is yet to be fully studied. But another very interesting dimension I would also mention finally is, have women leaders been performing better during COVID-19? This is a question which has been raised, or a suggestion that has been made by comparison to the functioning of Angela Merkel in Germany vis-a-vis Trump in the USA. Germany's functioning or handling of the COVID situation has been better, within quotes, compared to the US situation. Is it because the head of state is a woman? Is it coincidence that she is a woman? Or is it that feminine traits tend to operate better in this sort of a situation than what are considered as
recession? Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sri Chandan Rai. I now humbly request Dr. Devi Madam to be the chairperson of the plenary session that we are about to begin now. We will have the opportunity to listen to the deliberations of Dr. Tridip Chakraborty sir, Dr. Sanjukta Bhattacharya Madam, and Dr. Jayachandra Reddy Gundre sir in this session. We will take the question answers at the end of the session. Before handing it over to you, Devi ma'am, kindly allow me a few minutes to formally introduce the first speaker of the session, Dr. Tridip Chakraborty. Dr. Chakraborty was a professor and ex-head of the Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University, Kolkata. He did his BA, MA, MPhil and PhD from the Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University. He is an expert of South, Southeast Asian and Asia-Pacific affairs, Indian political thought and foreign policy and strategic studies. He has written more than 53 articles on different topics related to Southeast and South Asia in edited volumes published by Routledge London, Front Page Publications London, Malaysian Centre for Ethnic Studies Selangor, Malaysia, Institute of Southeast Asian Studies Publications, Singapore, Concept Publisher, Shipra Publications, Pentagon Press, New Century Publications, Pearson Knowledge World Publishers, Allied Publishers, etc., etc. He has published 4 books, of which the latest one from Taylor and Francis Routledge, London, was published in February 2020. He has co-edited 7 books on international relations and has also written more than 61 scholarly articles in internationally and nationally referred and peer-reviewed reputed journals. He travels abroad frequently to deliver lectures and has attended several international seminars and conferences. In 2015, he was selected as a visiting professor of ICCR chair at Dublin State University, Ireland. He was the former professor and former dean at School of Social Sciences, Adamus University, Barashat, West Bengal, and currently he is the Emeritus Professor, School of Liberal Arts and Cultural Studies at the same university. Over to you, ma'am. Hello. Hello. Baby ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes,
Ma'am,
yes.
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. It is indeed a pleasure to chair this session. I welcome Professor Tridip Chakraborty, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, Professor Jayachandra Reddy Gundre to make their presentations during this session. I also welcome all the participants to attend this session. Now, first, I would request Professor Tridip Chakraborty to make his presentation. Professor Chakraborty, will you please tell us the topic of your presentation and proceed to make your presentation? I suggest take around 20 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you. Professor Chakraborty? Is Professor Chakraborty audible?
Sir, you are muted. Sir, please unmute. Tridip sir, kindly unmute.
Hello, Professor Tridip Chakraborty. Professor Tridip Chakraborty?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please
Can
go
you
ahead.
hear me? Thank you very much. I have to, first of all, I have to express my sincere thanks to the organizers for giving me an opportunity. And it's a really great joy for me because I have seen 2 of my ex-colleagues in the Department of International Relations, Professor Devi Chatterjee and Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, and some of my students. Now, the topic which I have selected, probably that may be a controversial one, but I have selected because of certain reasons. The title of the topic is the Indira Gandhi ardent leader with strong-willed vision of India. So in this presentation, I will highlight her contribution in the her contribution of India in the global system. Now, let me start with Indira Gandhi's last dialogue, actually, about that speech which she delivered before she was assassinated on 31st October 1984. On that day, before that, on the previous day, he delivered a lecture in Bhubaneswar. And in that lecture, I quote, "I am here today, I may not be here tomorrow. Nobody knows how many attempts have been made to shoot me. I don't care whether I live or die. I have lived a long life and I am proud that I am spent the whole of my life in the service of my people. I shall continue to serve until my last breath. And when I die, I can say that every drop of my blood will invigorate India and strengthen it." So this is the last quotation that Indira Gandhi, she said, "You can't stop the nuclear attack." So this is the way she have a very strong skill how to tackle the issue. Now, she always, many people have blamed Indira Gandhi that the India's non-aligned policy is deviated. It is an interpretation. She always said, issue on the basis of merit. I have done it because it is necessary by considering my own national interest. Another major important thing I have to mention, that is the signing of the Shimla Agreement. What she had done in 1972, that was the real one of the major achievements she had done, and we are enjoying that facility. Okay, now Indira Gandhi is symbolized as a symbol of the third world leader. By refusing the signing of NPT, she gained political credit for upholding India's independence and for taking a principled stand discriminatory treaty. So whenever there is a problem, whenever the third world countries they are facing any problem, she always raised her voice in favor of the third world countries, and which Nehru had made more or less a policy which is a policy of solidarity. But Indira Gandhi have done something much more better, and Indira Gandhi have more or less emerged as an important leader of the third world countries. She have done number of other things. I should have, how much time I will get? Devi? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
How much?
Yes, another 5 minutes. Another 5 minutes.
And 1 minute for Jadavpur concession.
Take another 5 minutes.
Okay.
Right, thank
I will finish. Okay.
Right.
Because these are the plus points I'm telling about Madam Gandhi, but there are negative points are there. Now, one thing she have done is she have established the ISRO, and she have sent the first man into the space, Rakesh Sharma, in 1984. Now, these are the positive things she have done, but there are certain pitfalls. One of the important things, if you read Professor Mohan, our teacher's book, Professor Jayantani Bandyopadhyay's book, in the chapter The Personality, more or less you will find that she never trusts anyone. That's a problem. I will discuss why this is happening. She never trusts. You will find a lot of change of foreign minister, a lot of secretaries and other things. She never trusts. Whenever she is taking any decision, that was mostly her personal decision. And there are a number of cases where she have discussed, and she have not discussed with the cabinet ministers, not raised the issue in the parliament because of certain reasons. Anyway, so the point is that the negative point which I have to mention, the emergency, because I was a college, first year college student at that time. The emergency in 1975 to 1977 was a horrible condition,
and she have used her power too much, and number of things she have done which went quite negative in her favor, and as a result she have lost the power. But I have to mention, it may be a controversial one, the one thing that was done by his son, the sterilization. Yes, no party have the guts to do that. But one thing I have to mention, the vulnerability of our health structure, irrespective of any. We have a huge manpower, we don't know how to use the manpower. That's the real thing. So anyway, that was the thing that was done by her, which is, I am not supporting that one, but anyway, it was a mistake on her part. And the last one is the golden temple event, the Vindarwada, and which ultimately, the Blue Star, which ultimately, as a result of that one, she had lost her life. Now, she may be called by many intellectuals all over the globe an Iron Lady of India, like Margaret Thatcher, Srimaba Bandanayak, Budamir, etc. Now, the last important thing I have to mention, Indira Gandhi made herself a figure in the world history, with extraordinary skill she balanced the superpower against one another. Indira Gandhi was definitely successful in the international arena. She displayed her rare statesmanship in tackling international disputes. The image of India is our biggest concern. It is a fact that neglected and lonely childhood due to illness of her mother and political activities of her father, made her personality inevitably grew up with a latent feeling of socio-psychological insecurity, which manifested itself in various forms in her internal and external behavior or in later life. She never trusted any of his ministers and secretaries, and that is why she changes her ministers and secretaries quite often. Even if, in a number of occasions, related to any internal and external matter, she take a decision by herself and not even consulted with the cabinet ministers or not in the parliament. Now, since there is a paucity of time, what I have to mention is that forgiveness, she once said that forgiveness is the virtue of the brave. Indira Gandhi is and will be remembered as the most popular and powerful, enlightened Prime Minister of India and the most forward-looking leader who brought the country in the world stage. In her death, she has left a message to the people of this country and to the whole world. Quote, I quote, "A commitment to the people can never be killed by any power, however strong it may be." She was a true feminist to the core, a woman of substance who helped the country through a testing phase, possessed all the virtues of a woman, and fought valiantly for women's rights in a man's world. This was the quotation made by Khalid Ahmed in an article published in BBC. Before I end, in a nutshell, I can say that Indira Gandhi's unyielding pragmatism and destined outlook undoubtedly led to the positive advances enjoyed by India that saw the country to play its part in the global stage. On her ability to cope up with the demands of leading one of the world's largest nations, she offered charismatically rational analysis and said, so, I think the only reason I am able to serve this with equanimity is that I am not just myself, regardless of the situation in the country. I know the condition of the people. There is nothing I can see that I don't know about already. It is not that you don't feel it, but it is like a nurse and an illness. You see it in the perspective. With these words, I am expressing my sincere thanks to the organizer for giving me the opportunity to say something on Indira Gandhi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Tridip Chakraborty, for your very informative lecture. Thank you very much. I suppose there might be a few questions for the speakers. If there are any questions, please mention the question in your chat box and give your name, be very specific, and we can take up those questions after the three presentations have been made. Also, please mention whom the question is intended for, the name of the speaker. Before we go on to the next speaker, I would request Dr. Tilottama Mukherjee to introduce the next speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Mukherjee?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Sanjukta Bhattacharya, our next speaker. She did her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. She is currently retired, was a professor at the Department of International Relations in Jadavpur University. She has received the prestigious Fulbright Award twice and has 4 books as well as over 70 articles and chapters in international and national journals and edited volumes. She has also presented over 100 papers at national and international conferences. Currently, she is a member of academic councils, boards of studies, and doctoral committees of various grade 1 universities across the country. Is an executive board member of several prestigious academic bodies and the All India Vice President of the Jadavpur Association of International Relations. Her research interests include international relations, African studies, American studies, women's issues, medical ethics, and human rights. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, please. Please, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, please make your presentation and please tell us the title of your presentation first.
Thank you so much, Devidi. It's so nice to see you and to hear you. And Tridip also. It seems like back again in the department. The topic, I thank the organizers for inviting me to this webinar to present a paper. Now, this paper is going to be on actually international politics and women, and especially the focus is on the United States, because while most of us are acquainted with the politics of our own countries and basically women's representation in India, we do not know so much about other countries. Who was really examine the status of women in other parliamentary or presidential democracies? Focus on actual representation in parliaments or representative bodies and at the leadership level because of paucity of time. And this is a huge subject. So as we know, there are many types of governments in the world and many of them are democracies. But we also know that not all democracies are alike. Where they're alike, however, is, and this is more or less across the board, is that women, who average half the global population, are underrepresented in most, if not all, countries of the world in their respective representative bodies and the governments, especially at the level. According to the Interparliamentary Union, the IPU, as of October, was 24, representation of women was 24.5%, and 75% of female prime ministers and presidents all over the world took office only in the last 20 years. Implication is that it appears that realization is growing about women's underrepresentation, and many countries have eased their entry into their countries' respective bodies, representative bodies, through legislation or changes that help them get elected. But first, why is women's representation important or at all necessary in the first place? Many of you may have received social media posts, and this is something that Devi Chatterjee talked about also. This basically highlighted countries where women are the heads of state or government and have said that these countries have fared better and been able to manage the spread of the coronavirus during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I'm not going to comment on this since the pandemic is far from over. But just an aside, women are as capable as men, if not more capable, in crisis management. Maybe because they're so used to crisis management at home. This is just a kind of aside, as I'm saying. But basically, what is important is their ability to work with others and empathy, which is an ingrained trait. But to go back to my earlier question, one may point out that international relations are constituted by and constitutive of other types of relations. Among them, power relations and gender relations. And the two are interconnected since men in power often promote women's powerlessness. Many writers, on the other hand, have written about how women's leadership promotes bipartisanship, equality, and stability. And when women make up 25 to 30% of legislatures, they are more likely to challenge established conventions and policy agendas. In other words, in political roles, women probably can work together. It has been documented that women are more likely to cross party lines to find common ground for the common good. A study of the US Senate found that women senators more frequently worked across the aisle and passed more legislation than their male counterparts. More recently, female US senators from both parties joined to negotiate an accord to end a government shutdown. And in Northern Ireland, Catholic and Protestant women's groups joined forces to establish a powerful political party that made progress across religious divisions during the Northern Ireland peace efforts of the late 1990s. Further, research data has proved that female lawmakers are more likely to advocate for policies that support education and health. Parliaments with a higher share of women are also likely to pass and implement legislation to advance gender equality, including laws on gender violence, sexual harassment, etc. In Russia, women lawmakers cross party lines to impose penalties for violence against women. In India, it has been noted that women-led panchayats are more likely to support investment in things like clean drinking water, toilets, and so on. One study found that when women's parliamentary representation increases by just 5%, they are 5 times less likely to respond to an international crisis with violence. Within countries, increased women's representation is associated with a decreased risk of civil war, lower levels of state-perpetrated human rights violations like disappearance and torture. It is perhaps with this in mind that after the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, which is considered to be the worst genocide since the Second World War, a provision was made for the reservation of 40% 40% seats for women in the country's parliament. And today, women hold 61.4% of Rwanda's parliamentary seats, ranking it first among 193 countries regarding women's representation, according to the IPU data. Post-conflict Rwanda, with its majority of women parliamentarians, has supported inclusive decision-making processes that promote reconciliation efforts at the local level. And it is to its credit that there has been no renewal of Hutu-Tutsi violence or conflict in Rwanda in the last 26 years, something that was actually endemic in the country in the 34 years of independence before 1994. But despite this example, it is necessary to point out the near absence of women in peace talks and similar international security processes. Women and children are among the worst affected in men's wars. For instance, in Syria, or when the Islamic State or ISIS ran over large parts of the Middle East, or in the Bosnian conflict. But their issues are sidelined in peace negotiations because there are hardly any women in any major role in the peace processes that follow. Women's security, and by extension, men's security, real security, as well as children's security, according to many political scientists, can be furthered, if not ensured, if there is what is known as mirror representation. That is, if the proportion of women in the population is reflected in the proportion of women in leadership. However, this kind of representation is far away, and paradoxically, women have ascended to leadership and political roles in countries where women's social standing lags far behind men. To cite some figures about women's representation as of early to 2020, according to the Interparliamentary Union, that is the IPU, Rwanda ranks the highest, the first, with 61.4% women's representation out of 193 countries. Cuba comes second with 53.2%. Bolivia is third with 53.1%. Of European countries, only Finland with 46%, Spain with 44%, and Norway with 41.42% rank among the top 20 countries among 190.
Madam, someone muted you, madam. Man, unmute yourself, madam.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Okay. Well, just to repeat, basically, only 3 European countries come within the first 20 in this list, and basically 2 of them are Scandinavian countries and 1 is Spain. Now, USA, of which I'm going to talk about, well, it ranks 75th out of 193 countries, with only 23.5% women in the House of Representatives, which is less than the global average of 24.1%. China has 25% representation, but what role the women play there is unknown. Closer to home, both Bangladesh and Pakistan have 20% representation in parliament, in the respective parliaments. India, unfortunately, has only 12%. Why is there such gross difference? Every country has its own challenges, and in fact, because of paucity of time, I'm not going to go into that, but let me make certain generalizations. Challenges faced by women can be grouped under 2 broad categories with many subcategories. Firstly, gender inequality within families, inequitable distribution of labor within households, and cultural barriers, including sex stereotyping, which typically means that women are considered weaker than men and therefore not fit for a political role, which leads to a lack of political socialization or preparation for political office or political activity, since the desire to enter politics is not a choice within the household, in most households, or even endorsed by society at large. There is also the issue of balancing work and family. Men are never asked how they will balance political roles with family life, but women inevitably are. And secondly, there are systemic challenges. The plurality majority voting system puts women at a disadvantage. Financing is also a major problem, since most women do not have the means or resources that men have, since they are normally at the lower end of the professional ladder and find it difficult to get funding. Even when elected, they are given less valued cabinet positions, as Devi Chatterjee pointed out, like health, education, and welfare, but rarely finance, defense, or home. Women who are elected often have kinship ties with, basically, and this was also pointed out by Professor Chatterjee, they have, well, high-flying male relatives in politics, or they come from high-status families, and therefore they are less likely to represent issues faced by low-income women and families. Here are a few theories may be mentioned. According to the role congruity theory, female leaders are evaluated more negatively because of traits associated with their gender. That is, they are perceived to be dependent and emotional, which are incongruous with the accepted notions of what a leader should be. That is, leaders should reflect strength and nationality, which are supposed to be male traits. According to the ambivalent sexism theory, sexism towards women consists of two components, hostile and benevolent sexism. Hostile sexism refers to more traditional prejudice and hostility towards women and is based on beliefs that women are threatening men's position and power. Benevolent sexism includes attitudes of appreciation for women, but are based on beliefs that women are weaker than men and traditional gender roles should remain in society, which means men should protect women and not vice versa. These theories are based on basically the fact of a political system traditionally based on patriarchy, something that discourages women from running for office. How does this all pan out in the United States, which is considered to be the world's foremost democracy, but which ranks 75th, as I pointed out, in its lower house? But first, let me state certain facts about the United States, which makes it a different democracy from others, and also basically difficult to generalize regarding women. When the US Constitution was drafted, it stated that all men are created equal, leaving out women, or for that matter, other races. Only white men were created equal, and that to certain white men, male. Not those who were in prison, not those basically who were poor. After a long struggle, the suffragette movement, women got the right to vote only in 1920 through the 19th Amendment. This is very different from India, where women got the right to vote when the Constitution was drafted. And we did not really have to go through this kind of a struggle. The second point is that black women in the South still did not get the right to vote, despite the fact that the 15th Amendment gave former slaves the right to vote, but not basically women. Also further, these rights got whittled away, especially in the South, through racial clauses attached to state constitutions. African women therefore got the right to vote only in 1965 with the Voting Rights Act, which gave all persons born or naturalized in the United States the right to vote. Now, the third point, America has a federal constitution, which implies that states have liberty in drafting laws that may not be in sync with federal laws. So, certain states like California actually gave women the right to vote much earlier than 1920. And the fourth point, America is the most diverse country so far as ethnicity is concerned. According to the US Census of 2010, African Americans constitute 13.6% of the population, Latinos constitute 16% of the population, Asians 5.6%, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders 0.4%, and American Indians and Alaska Natives 1.7%. The experience of women from these ethnic groups have varied and continue to vary very sharply, and all of them have been disadvantaged in the past compared to white women because of gender, ethnic, racial and class prejudices in the US, of which there is plenty. Therefore, when we speak of American women in politics, we should also ask which American women. So far as white women, they played a role in politics, though unrecognized since American independence. And here I'd like to state just one little story. Abigail Adams was the wife of John Adams, one of the first presidents of the United States and also one of the writers of the Constitution. In 1776, when America was getting ready to declare independence, she wrote to her husband to remember the ladies in the new code of laws governing the United States because the harsh English laws governing marriage ended women. Yet this went unheard and the laws stood just as they were. Now, during the War of Independence, however, and we do not know really about this, women, some of them served in the battlefield. They fought, they took up arms. Others actually helped through basically nursing, cooking, raising money, and yet others, like Indians during the freedom struggle, they rejected imported cloth in favor of homemade cloth, founded Daughters of Liberty clubs to match the Sons of Liberty clubs of the men. But all this went unrecognized, and they were given no part in American polity for over 100 years. In the late 19th century, the American suffragette movement put pressure on the government to give women voting and other rights. I'm not going to mention that a referendum stimulated by the progressive movement in the from the from the 1890s, led to, in fact, a number of states giving women the right to vote before the 19th Amendment. That is, California gave the right in 1911, and in fact, by 1915, 10 states, all women to be elected to the House of Representatives at the federal Congress was Jeanette Rankin from Montana in 1916, even before the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, and therefore there was a lot of debate about whether she should at all be seated because, well, there was no women's representation in the center. Finally, the amendment basically gave women the right to vote in 1920, and the first woman to be elected to the Senate was Hattie Caraway from Arkansas, 1932. Now, African women, the first African woman to be elected to the Congress was as late as 1968, Shirley Chisholm, who actually also ran for president in 1972, but of course hardly got any vote. And the first woman, African-American woman, to be elected to the Senate was as late as 1992, Carol Mosley Braun from Illinois. It is interesting that in many elections, the number of women voters exceed male voters, but very few women actually, till very recently, have come out as candidates. Now, basically, why is there activism in the last few years, especially the last 10 years, and I should say the last 4 years, more to the point? To answer this, one must go back to the 1960s and the second wave of the women's movement, often called the feminist movement in the United States. This aided women candidates by fundamentally altering women's educational and economic opportunities and facilitating liberalization of attitudes towards women. Beginning in the 1970s, women's political action committees, that is PACs, donor groups and other women's groups began to recruit, train and fund women candidates. One of the best known is Emily's List. Emily's List actually stands for Early Money is Like East, a very woman thing. This was founded in 1985, but basically it contributes funds to women donor networks to finance women's campaigns. It supports actually pro-choice Democratic women candidates and provides early money. Its role in helping, in fact, Democratic Party women to win Congress seats cannot be overstated. Now, basically, one of the other reasons is probably the lack of high-profile women leaders who basically inspired women to vote. Now, here the importance of Condoleezza Rice as the first African woman Secretary of State, and Hillary Clinton, the first white woman Secretary of State, as well as the person to get nominated from a major party, should not be understated. Her shocking defeat, everybody thought that she was going to win against Donald Trump in 2016, also has to be taken into account. It is not surprising that a record number of women candidates ran for the Congress 2 years afterwards, 2018, in the midterm elections. And also many got elected, and the connection, the indirect, between Hillary's loss 2016 and the wins of 2018 cannot be overlooked. Actually, Hillary Clinton, many of you may not know this, actually won the popular vote by 3 million, which she lost the electoral college vote. Following the 2016 election, a long writing appeared dissecting the causes of Hillary Clinton's defeat. I'm not going to discuss that, but I'm going to mention a book which she wrote, which came out in 2017, called What Happened, which is actually an autopsy of her campaign. Gender is a dominant theme in her book. She speaks of the deep-rooted sexism and double standards she faced as the first woman nominated by a major party in America's 240-year history. And basically she says, these played a hand in her defeat. In an interview with New York Times, promoting basically her book, she said, and I'm quoting here, this has to be called out for what it is, a cultural, political, economic game that is being played to keep women in their place. The idea that women have to fit certain stereotypes, that's a weight around the ankle of every ambitious woman I have ever met. She further added, we get constant messages over our whole lives. You are not thin enough, talented enough, smart enough. She said that part of the motivation to write the book stemmed from wishing to spell out the consequences of failing to address the gender gap that is ingrained in every level of society. She said, Both sexism and misogyny are endemic in America. And she added, the moment a woman steps forward and says, I'm running for office, it begins. The analysis of her face, her body, her voice, her demeanor, the diminishing of her status, her ideas, her accomplishments, her integrity. This does not happen with men. Nobody analyzes the looks or voice or demeanor of a male US presidential candidate. I'd like to know whether there was such kind of basically discussion regarding Donald Trump's appearance or how he spoke, or basically the way he speaks. Even today, even women did not all support Hillary, and part of it was because not a party affiliation, but because she was a woman. Trump's victory happened in part because apparent female solidarity did not pan out at the ballot box. 53% of white women voted for Trump. However, Hillary Clinton's candidacy was important for women's representation, as we can see from its aftermath. The power of an inspiring candidacy is in the imagination it sparks. In the 2018 midterm elections, a record 476 women entered primaries for 435 House seats, mainly from the Democratic Party. And as of 2019, 127 women are in Congress. That is 102 in the House of Representatives, which is about 23%. 23.5%, and 25 are in the Senate. As you know, the Senate consists of 100, so this is 25%. There are also 2,127 women in state legislatures now, increasing women's representation at that level from 25.4% to 28.9%. Nevada, with 2 women in the Senate, US Senate, has become the first state to have a female majority legislature. Colorado has 47% women representation in its legislature. At the 2018 midterm elections, women voter turnout was greater than men's at every age level except 65 plus. And even more heartening is that women presidential candidates, when they began to file for nomination in 2019, we find a record number in American history. That is, 6 women candidates filed their candidacies, 5 of them from the Democratic Party. 4 of them were actually senators. 1 was from the House of Representatives. Of course, we now know that none of them succeeded. But this signifies a change in attitudes, which is very important. Whether this is because of the Me Too movement of 2017-2018, which was responsible for the downfall of many men in high offices, or because of Hillary Clinton, who almost won, who almost got elected, or because Trump is considered a die-hard misogynist, it is difficult to say. But there is certainly a change in attitudes. According to a 2018 Pew Research Center study, 61% of Americans felt positive about women running for office in 2018. There has also been improvement among African American women, who were 42% of all women members and 8.8% of all members in the US House in 2019, even though they still lack representation in the Senate. Also, Mazie Hirono was the first Asian American woman to be elected to the Senate in 2013, and Catherine Cortez Monto from Nevada was the first Latina to be elected to the Senate in 2017. However, ethnic stereotyping is still very prevalent, and basically women of color, all colors, find it difficult to get. Although there has been an increase in female political activism and representation, it is increasingly in the Democratic Party. In the November 2018 midterm elections, exit polls showed that women favored Democratic Party candidates for Congress by 59% to 40%, while men favored Republican candidates by 51% to 47%. The Democratic margin over Republicans in party identification among women grew 6 points from 48% to 42% in 1994 to nearly 20 points in 2017, that is 56% to 37%. This boils down to more women candidates being elected from the Democratic Party rather than from the Republican Party. Despite recent gains, it may still be pointed out that USA ranks 75th in the world in terms of women's representation. Although attitudes may be changing, sexism, stereotyping, general skepticism about the appropriateness of women wielding political power remain. To give an example, many Americans considered Elizabeth Warren as the best candidate for president. Yet, she faced issues of gender stereotyping even from the present Democratic presidential nominee, Bernie Sanders, and ultimately dropped out of the race. Further, all else being equal, financing of political campaigns continues to put American women at a disadvantage because of the effect of gender and race on employment opportunities, personal income, and wealth. But the upside is that increased interest of women, not only in the US, but in many countries, to run for office. I wish to conclude with basically certain observations in the UN regarding how to increase women's participation in politics. The UN has highlighted 6 avenues: equalization of educational opportunities, quotas for participation in governing bodies, legislation to increase focus on women's and children's issues, financing gender-responsive budgets, increasing the presence of sex disaggregated statistics in national data, and grassroots women's empowerment. But all countries have an overwhelmingly male leadership, and they will be slow to implement any of these or other clauses that may empower women, and we have a long way to go. According to a report of the Council of Foreign Relations of May 2020, only 19 out of 193 countries have a female head of state or government. Only 14 out of 193 countries have at least 50% women in national cabinets, and only 4 out of 193 countries have at least 50% women in the national legislature. These figures are dismal. But if we look at lower levels of government, the situation is certainly better. What matters is that women are participating and are also winning. Visual images affect how we think, and symbolic victories reflect changing values and priorities. New perspectives change policy, even if slowly. And to end, Indira Gandhi was Tridip's topic, and I'm just taking it from him. India, every thinking woman in India to think positively. Hillary Clinton and her defeat, shocking defeat, I must say, appears to have opened the floodgate of change in the United States. Thank you very much, and thank you again for inviting me to present. Lady D.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhattacharya. We'll proceed on to the next and the final presentation by Professor Jayachandra Reddy Gundre. But before that, Dr. Tilottama Mukherjee will introduce the paper presenter. Please. Tilottama, please.
Audible?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, please.
Okay. Professor Jayachandra Reddy Gundre is the Director and Chairman, Board of Studies, UGC Center for Southeast Asian and Pacific Studies, Sri Venkateshwara University, Tirupati. His area of research interests are regional geography, security, strategic and geopolitical issues of Southeast Asia and Pacific regions. He published 40, not less than 40 research papers and 9 books, business and international seminars, Vietnam and China for education purposes. Dr. Reddy was a faculty member in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies at Mekelle University, Ethiopia, between 2003 and 2007. Was a coordinator for the post-graduation program and the principal investigator of 2 successfully completed research projects, as well as the secretary of the drafting committee of the proposals submitted to the World Bank on Development and Innovative Fund for the Faculty Development and the GIS Laboratory. He also served on a committee of the Mekelle University collaboration with the US universities. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Tilottama. Your nice words.
My pleasure, sir.
Very good afternoon for all the participants. With the permission of Chair, Professor Devi Chatterjee.
Yes, Professor Reddy. Professor Reddy, can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Please, Professor Reddy, I
you.
welcome you to make your presentation. Your topic, please. Please proceed.
Yes, Yeah, I am just let me thank the organizers for giving this opportunity for me. With the permission of the chair, let me start my presentation. In fact, I have prepared many titles for presentation. After listening to the earlier presentations, go on changing my perception. Now I shifted to the topic like women, society, and politics. Yeah. Then coming to just I want to take three dimensions. One is what is all about woman transformation, how woman has been transforming from time to time, and how the society is transforming, how women are adjusting or accommodating in the existing society in different types, and how what are the opportunities and challenges of women to come into the politics. This is all about a brief introduction of my topic. Then coming to woman, let me go back to the. I don't have any structured lecture, but let me go back to the beginning of human life. In the Stone Age, there was no discrimination, there was no division. Everybody was independent in their action. They enjoyed their independent life. Then the Stone Age has ended when people started coming onto the plain lands. Then they started cultivation or fire, identifying fire, some introduction, some activity. There they started living together. And to my knowledge, then slowly it started from that stage to mobilizing from one place to other place. So the entire process had involved many variety of activities. That is more important. Earlier in the Stone Age, only eating and sleeping, just like any other living creatures in the nature. Human being was also considered as a living creature in the forest. Then all the creatures left in the forest itself, only human beings expectations what we are technology in the name of modernization. It has not come in overnight. There are a lot of things that happen and many centuries have taken place. And in this process, how women have enjoyed and what is the origin of division? Let me say the division. When did the division took place? Slowly, the division between in this universe, only division, the first division in the nature itself, they based on gender. That is the first division that took place in all the living creatures, men and women. This division is natural. Then why this division has widened further? In the perception of understanding women's role, I'm not telling there is a gap between women and men. And now we are at a place fighting for the rights. That's what I want to emphasize. Why women are fighting, what is the need, why that situation has arisen. And we have to discuss all these issues in this presentation. Then the relationship versus management. Whenever there was no relation during Stone Age, when they entered into the plain lands, when they started some economic activity, that is more important. When there is a possibility of economic activities, then only the management has come into the picture. When the management is required, the sharing of the responsibility. The sharing of responsibility based on the potentialities. Here, I want to make it very clear, women are no way inferior to men in terms of physical strength, mental strength, or intelligence or IQA, whatever you say, IQ, in all terms. Because when human beings were living in the forest, there was no discrimination between Yes, they used to survive independently. Now you take whether it is a male tiger or female tiger, they have to earn their food. There is no difference. Why here some difference has come between men and women? Here it is not categorically or it is not planned. It is nothing but when they established the relationship, then management has come into existence. That may be family management, that may be society management, altogether the relationship versus management. In this process, there was a clear division of sharing, the responsibilities between women and men. Based on the need, there was no substitute for a mother in this world or in this nature. For that simple reason, women were supposed to be at home. There was nothing other reason. Only their mothership made them to be at home in the beginning. Then men started taking care of the other things, what are required for the family, or the survival of the entire family. So there it started. Then origin of power and politics. The origin of power and politics are not the basic character of human beings. The origin of power and politics came into existence along with the economy. When the economic, the size of economy of family or society or a country go on increasing, the responsibilities are also growing. During this process, the division of work has been diluted because there is a lot of money is required for the family, what we are expecting, and women are encouraged to come out of the home to enter into the economic activity mainstream of life without any bar. There is no restriction. Women should do this one and men should do this one. Except there is no other alternative for mothership except that the women are enjoying or they are supposed to enjoy their utilizing their intellectuality, their whatever all required for the betterment of the society and the family. So in this process, this power, whenever the power, that may be political power or economic power, we need to understand the power means it is not only political power, it is also economic power. The economic empowerment of the family, the decision involvement of decision making of women in the family affairs. There it started, slowly it has grown from involvement in the economic affairs and further moved into political decisions. What we are seeing. But in this process, what is happening? Woman has gone through many centuries in different generations, in geographical conditions, economic conditions, and social structure. Here, particularly, what we need to understand, the woman generation through many centuries transformed. The society is not static; it is a dynamic aspect. Society is never static; it go on changing from time to time, year to year, century to century. And this process, the independent woman, what I want to say, in the Stone Age period, absolutely there was no division of labor. Everybody is independent, was independent. From independent woman to social arrangements, then she turned out to be housewife, from housewife to working woman to woman leadership, and then coming into the another domain, women fighters for their freedom. That is unfortunate. That's what we need to understand. Why should they fight for their freedom? It is natural. Everyone is having right. In the society, in the given society, there is no need to fight for freedom. Of course, here we have certain things to understand. We are fighting for the freedom of women and where they have to accommodate. The woman, the role of woman or freedom of woman is common in the entire world? No. It all depends upon the economic freedom, the political freedom, and the society. These three are the major objectives that are deciding the role of woman in different countries. For example, in the Islamic countries, the freedom of woman is totally different. In developing countries like Asia, it's totally different set of arrangement. If you go to advanced countries, developed countries or Western countries, the role of woman again totally, you cannot compare. Again, within the same country, you go from one state to other state. In Bengal, in West Bengal, we can see more freedom for women than any other state. Then coming to Kerala. Why? This is nothing but awareness and education. The literacy rate in Kerala is 100%. I don't know the statistics, but the West Bengal literacy rate is also exponentially good. At the same time, the awareness of West Bengal society is more, no comparison with any other society in India. That's why when compared with other states within the country itself, there are differences. Why these differences are there? This all depends upon the support from the family, the support from the society, the acceptability of the society, the accommodativeness of the society. These are all important. So where should why? Simple fighting is not sufficient to get freedom for women. We have to start from curriculum, from the childhood itself. One should, particularly a boy should learn that a girl is no way inferior. Yes, we are separating them. I have visited many countries. Many countries, they don't have that type of differentiation between based on the gender at the childhood itself. Yes, we are dividing based on the gender within the family itself, brother and sister. If they grow to some certain age, they are not supposed to move together, brother and sister. Right? So there are many, for example, in many African countries, there is no gender discrimination. Why? The society. The society is the main factor. They don't find any difference. They don't find fault. Who is the leader? And the difference has started. Differentiation started from the society itself, from at home. House is the first step to be corrected, to get freedom for women. Parents are the first one. The family members. Simply, it is not the political decision, it is the social management, social accommodation, social acceptability. Otherwise, it is not possible. Being a politician, I can give you a statement. Being a woman, you can demand for your rights. These statements and demands may not coincide because society has not prepared properly. So who is society? What is society? We are all the society. If every family has properly brought their children, understanding what is the gender difference, what is the basic reason, what are the challenges, what are the merits and demerits out of differentiating based on the gender. Yes, if we go on making certain corrections based on these issues, yes, definitely women empowerment is not a big issue. But many people, unfortunately, they are thinking that fighting for freedom is one aspect, making policy decisions or politically, that is one part. These two things will be done. It is absolutely wrong. Unless the society has transformed completely, there is no freedom for women. Yes, Madam was giving some percentage of political leaders in as a member of parliament or assemblies. No, that is not sufficient. Unfortunately, in many cases, women are supposed to be, they got elected, but the entire show run by men. No, empowerment, women empowerment means not making them as a ornamental, not giving, don't give reservation. You give them full freedom, 100%. You utilize their expertise. You utilize their intelligence for the betterment of the society. Why do you limit them? Why do you give only 50% or 40% or 30%? The suitability is much more important than considering in terms of percentage. That won't help the society. Then women empowerment versus men support. As I said earlier, we have to educate first men if you want to see 100% women empowerment. Who should give the empowerment? Means we are demanding, women are demanding for empowerment means they are not empowered. By whom? By men only. Yes, they have to change their mindset. They have to change their attitude. As a father, as a husband, different roles are there to be played by men to see that the empowerment of women is perfectly given. No, it is not happening. So this is not properly understood. What is wrong with the woman? No, nothing. It is all misconception, misunderstanding. Then coming to the type of roles and of a woman depends upon the type of society. As I said, all the society, the entire world is not having the same set of principles of society. Family setup is totally different. Economic society is totally different. As a result, the society is no comparison. So they just, if we want to understand properly, thoroughly, the preparedness to grow multidimensionally. The preparedness is much more important. Simple statements, simple agitations, simple demands will not be useful under any circumstances. Let me tell you, in local body elections, under women category, 30% reservation is given for women. They got elected. They are unable to run the show. Here I am not criticizing women, but preparedness is not there. As a child, parents should promote girl as a dynamic leader. The parents, not the country. Don't blame the country. Don't blame the parliament. Don't blame any political party. Let us look into ourselves, how we are helping our own children, under what circumstances we are allowing them to grow. That is most important. Being a father, if I don't allow my daughter, who will give the freedom? Even some cases, mothers are not encouraging. That is quite unfortunate. No, you are not supposed to do all these things. Being a girl, you should be limit yourself. Don't compete with your brother. If this is the situation, how they get freedom? What is empowerment? Empowerment is not but constituting a big committee or corporation, dumping some money. This money will be completely spent for the woman empowerment. That is not the right way. It should start from the family. As a father, how men is encouraging. As a husband, how he is encouraging his wife. That is most important. That cannot be changed. If my daughter, for example, if my daughter brought up in a proper manner where he can, without a demand, she can grab all sorts of the possible opportunities can be grabbed by her. Why should one fight on the roads? If the compatibility, the competence of girl, it should come from the childhood. Full freedom should be given. There should not be any discrimination. Most probably, unfortunately, I am telling, we should close immediately all exclusive women colleges. We are separating them. That means you should be away from the society. Why should they go for exclusive women colleges? Is there any exclusive boys college or men college? Why we separate them? Oh, this is my personal feeling. Like this, we are separating starting from the kid, a girl, from woman to woman. We are discriminating unknowingly, and we are planning in a big way. Unknowingly, we are damaging a girl. Unknowingly, we are damaging a woman, and in a planned manner, we are giving big statements that we are going to dedicate. This government is dedicated to say that the woman empowerment will be possible. No, it is not possible. Money will not change the status of women in the society. Is it? No. The society should change the status of women in the same, how they have to accommodate, how they have to invite women in different domains. Not invitation, by default it goes. Let us stop demarcating the absolute division of based on the gender. I strongly oppose the women colleges or women universities. If you want to separate, there is no meaning. Where should you develop your skills? Skills of leadership. You have to fight with the men. You have to fight in the society. If you are escaping from this situation and you are excluding yourself from the mainstream of the life, mainstream of the society, where should you learn? So this is another point. Then professional compatibility, support from these 2 points we already discussed. Of course, I didn't make any constructive structured lecture. Just I tried to throw some light on important points where we have to realize how we have to promote women towards empowerment. So these are the certain things I want to bring for your notice. Then if you have any doubts, that will be answered during question and answer. I know very much now it is 1:30. If I go beyond that, they may not be happy for all the participants. Considering the intention of the participants, remind me here. Just thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Reddy. It was a very interesting presentation, There are, I think, just a few questions that have been raised for all the three participants. I would request the three paper presenters to take up 1 or 2 minutes, if they feel so, to answer the queries. The queries are there in your chat box.
Ma'am, Devi ma'am.
Yes.
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can I now request Ms. Shukana Manna and Ms. Panna Ghosh, my colleague in the Department of Political Science at Shama Prasad College, to let us know the questions from the chat box, both at Google Meet and at YouTube.
Right, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Over to you, Shukana and Panna. Kindly give the questions. I think we can devote about 5 to 10 minutes maximum for discussing all the questions.
Right. We do not have much time. Yes.
Yes.
Please.
Shukana, please unmute.
Yes, am I audible now?
Yes.
Very good afternoon to the honorable speakers as well as the participants. So we have got a few number of questions. The first question is from Chandan Mondol to Professor Debi Chatterjee ma'am. The question is, can women get empowered through informal labor activities under the patriarch society?
Ma'am, should we take all the questions together and then we can start answering?
I suppose that would be...
Yes. Shukana and Panna, kindly give all the questions.
Okay. The second question is from Pradeep Panda. He asks that it is, and this is for Professor Tritip Chatterjee sir. He says that it is nice to listen to the example of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. But the thing is that how many women are in the frontline politics because our middle class patriarch sentiment do not allow to come to the political platform. This is for Sir Tridip Chatterjee. The third question is again from Mr. Pradeep Panda, and this is addressed to Professor Debi Chatterjee ma'am. He asks for the analyzation of the effective community leadership of women. The fourth question, Anisha Hazarika, Professor Devi Chatterjee ma'am. She asks, what is your view regarding suppressed, not only in outer fields, but also at home? Isn't it necessary that society need to change the typical mindset on women right from their roles at home? The fifth question is from Manoranjan Padua. This is addressed to the chairperson. He asks, what is the way to reach mainstream politics for those women who belong to poor family and first generation learners? Our final question is from Sunny Bagh from SET Anandaram Jaipuria College, Kolkata, and this is for Professor Reddy. He says that in India, there are lots of examples of celebrity faces of politicians, men and women both. Yet, people generally troll female candidates more than the male counterparts. So he asks, what do you think about this discrimination? So these are the questions that we have got from both the platforms.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Yes. Thank you very much. I would suggest that since we have very little time, I would suggest that three paper presenters give their replies to the questions that have been asked to them, take about 1 or 2 minutes each, and address the questions. And finally, after they have finished, I shall answer the queries that have been placed before me. Normally a keynote address, for a keynote address, questions are not asked.
Yes.
But nevertheless, since queries have come up and it has been seen as a continuation of the earlier session. I would try to address those questions in another minute or two. So I would suggest Professor Tridip Chakraborty first. Please take up.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, there is a thank you very much. There is an interesting. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
The question is that how Indira Gandhi's influence actually in the front line of Indian politics. Actually, what I have to say that Indira Gandhi was ruled during the time when most of the male-dominated society. So Indira Gandhi more or less appeared as a symbol of women in Indian politics. Symbol of women who exerted her position not only at the domestic level, also in the international level, and which inspired many women to come in the forefront. That is my viewpoint.
Okay, Professor Sangyukta Bhattacharya.
Actually, no question was really read out, but I can see from the messages over here on the side that Pradeep Panda did ask something about how many really participate in the decision-making process, and that also he commented patriarchal sentiment does not allow most of the women to come to the forefront. Now, basically, how many really participate in the decision-making process, and that is what I pointed out in my lecture, that in the decision-making process, there are very few. If you're looking at basically India, or if you're looking at the United States, which was actually the focus of my discussion, you'll find that women are not really in decision. Well, you can see Nirmala Sitharaman is the finance minister, but is she really a decision maker? I don't know under the circumstances over here. Secretary of State in the United States, Condoleezza Rice earlier, and after that Hillary Clinton. Yes, they're very much part of the process, but you find that they're absent in the decision-making process. There are very few countries, just about 19 countries out of 193, in which there are women heads of state or government. So basically, they are not really so much in the decision-making process, but they are in government. And what is basically on the upside is that there is more women are coming out to participate in the process, and you find this at the lower levels in India, you find this at the state level, and in fact, it's like school boards, etc. in the United States, as you know, that basically from judges to whatever, everybody is elected, and you find that more and more women are getting elected to those positions, but it's still 23.5% is not so much. But what you find is that they do play a role, because if you find that it was the women set the shutdown races. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Reddy?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
I have one question from Chennai Bark. Why there is such a discrimination against women? Yes, I already argued, if we want to eliminate this discrimination, not the woman empowerment, girl empowerment is required. When girl was not empowered, all of a sudden after 30 years or 40 years, when she became woman, she cannot be empowered automatically. There is no mechanism in this world. A girl should be empowered. The caption of woman empowerment should be changed. It should be girl empowerment. When at the small age, at home itself, she has been empowered. Should be away from the discrimination at home, comparing with the boys. So it should start